Welcome to The Explainer. This one is brought to you by Forge College. Today, we're diving into a concept that's literally the bedrock of trust in blockchains. So in our last lesson, we rolled up our sleeves and built some really robust automation workflows to validate blocks, right? We saw how validation acts as this essential shield against bad actors by checking things like signatures and gas limits. But, well, here's the kicker. Just because a transaction is valid definitely doesn't mean it's permanent. So today we're going to figure out exactly how to know when a transaction is truly, safely locked in for good.
Here's our blueprint for the session. We'll start by comparing validation and finality, then break down the two different types of finality out there. After that, we'll look at the hidden threat of reorgs, how to actually measure confirmation depth, and most importantly, how to automate those checks. We'll wrap it all up with some final takeaways. All right, let's jump right into part one, validation versus finality. It's incredibly easy to fall into a false sense of security when you're first starting out with this stuff. You might think, hey, my transaction passed validation, I'm totally good. But honestly, that is a super dangerous assumption. Think about the core difference here. Validation is basically just asking, is this legitimate? Finality, on the other hand, asks a much tougher question. Will it stick? It's kind of like a friend promising to pay you back for lunch. The promise is totally valid, sure, but finality is when that bank transfer actually clears and the money is sitting safely in your account. At the end of the day, you just can't spend a promise. So what's our formal, rock-solid definition here? Transaction finality is when the protocol guarantees that a transaction will not be reverted from the canonical ledger. And I want to really emphasize that word, guarantees. It's that exact moment when the network collectively decides that your transaction is permanent. Absolutely no alternative history can come along and wipe it out. Moving on to part two, let's talk about the two types of finality. Now, how does a blockchain actually make that kind of ironclad guarantee? Well, not all finality is created equal. We've got probabilistic finality on one side and deterministic finality on the other. Probabilistic finality is kind of like a detective gathering evidence over time. Every new block that gets built on top of yours is basically another clue confirming your transaction happened. The risk of reversion goes down statistically as more time passes, but technically speaking, it's never absolute zero. On the flip side, deterministic finality is like a judge banging a gavel and shouting, "Case closed." It's a protocol-level event completely backed by a quorum of votes. Once that specific threshold is hit, reversion becomes mathematically impossible. Okay, part three. Let's uncover the threat of reorgs. You might be wondering, why do we even need all this heavy-duty finality stuff in the first place? Well, it all comes down to a hidden danger lurking in decentralized networks, the reorg. Short for chain reorganization, this happens when a previously accepted block is suddenly replaced by a longer or heavier competing chain. And when that happens, the transactions in that orphaned block are completely invalidated. I kind of like to describe a reorg as the blockchain playing a giant game of taking backsies with your transaction. It was there and poof, now it's just gone. If you had already shipped out physical goods based on that first block, well, you're in a lot of trouble. Which brings us to part four, measuring confirmation depth. So how do we actually survive this threat of taking backsies? We look at how engineers practically measure their safety using a pretty golden formula. The number of confirmations equals the latest block number minus the block number of your transaction receipt plus 1. This simple bit of math is basically the decentralized equivalent of feverishly refreshing the tracking page on a package delivery. Every single time the latest block number goes up, your confirmation depth increases right along with it. And your anxiety about a potential reorg, that goes down. Now, what's really important to remember here is the number 1. If your transaction is included in the absolute latest block on the chain, applying our formula gives you exactly one single confirmation. And I need you to remember this. One confirmation is the point of absolute highest risk. It means your block is sitting right there at the very tip of the chain, highly vulnerable to being reorged out by a slightly faster competitor. So you definitely never want to blindly trust a single confirmation, especially for a high-value transfer. Let's dive into part 5. Automating your checks. Now, knowing the math is one thing, but come on, as engineers, we want to automate this. We definitely don't want to be manually refreshing block explorers all day long. So here are the logical steps you'd actually program into your backend script. Step 1, fetch the transaction receipt. Step 2, compute the depth using our handy little formula. But Step 3 is absolutely crucial. This is where the magic happens. You don't just count blocks. You fetch the block header at your receipt's block height, and then you compare its hash to the block hash on your original receipt. Doing this completely replaces raw guesswork with a foolproof, automated protocol. Because think about it. If those two hashes do not match, boom, reorg detected. The canonical block hash is not equal to your receipt block hash.
What that means is the chain has literally shifted underneath you, and the block that originally contained your transaction is no longer part of the main history. If your automated script sees this mismatch, it needs to instantly sound the alarm, halt the physical shipment, pause the cross-chain bridge transfer, whatever it is. It's your ultimate safety net.
Let's wrap things up with part 6, our final takeaways. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the theory of permanence all the way down to the actual code logic for detecting chain shifts. Let's just quickly cement this knowledge with 3 core principles. First off, validation does not equal finality. Validation checks the rules today. Finality ensures the record actually persists tomorrow. Second, confirmation depth is a probabilistic proxy. It's a fantastic heuristic for sure, but remember, counting blocks gives you statistical safety, not a protocol-level deterministic guarantee. And third, always programmatically monitor your receipt hashes. Simply counting blocks just isn't enough if you aren't actually verifying whether the foundation you're counting on still has the exact same block hash. Which leaves us with this final burning question. So, how confident are you that your transaction will stick? Are you out there relying on just one confirmation, or do you have a truly robust automated monitor in place? Really think about that as you design your next projects. In our upcoming lesson, we're going to take all of this a step further and explore consensus mechanisms. We'll dive into exactly how different networks achieve that glorious deterministic finality we talked about earlier. Until then, keep learning and keep building. And remember, this explainer was brought to you by Forge College. Be sure to visit forge.college to learn way more about this subject and completely level up your Web3 knowledge. See you next time.